Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right everybody, thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show where I read a lot of comic books, and I let you know what I thought about them. And I do want to highlight dynamicforces.com real quick. Check out their website. They got great limited edition covers, CGC books, signed books, remarks, amazing content over at dynamicforces.com. And be sure to enter Robbie at your cart and save 10%. And we always start with the pick of the week. This week's pick of the week: Decorum number 8, to the surprise of absolutely nobody. This is the long-anticipated, much-awaited finale to Decorum by Jonathan Hickman and Mike Huddleston. This book has been blowing me away, and then all of a sudden, crickets. There's been nothing, and it's taken forever for this final issue to come out. Was it worth the wait? Does it live up to the hype? In my opinion, absolutely. This book has been fresh, imaginative, and innovative throughout its entire run. The ending is a little bit, I wouldn't say predictable, okay? It's not a predictable ending, but everything that's been set up over the course of the last 7 issues comes to fruition very nicely in this final issue. And even though I hadn't read an issue of Decorum for months and months and months, and I did intend on doing a reread of 1 through 7 before I read this, I didn't do it, but it still worked. It still hit me. I was right in the exact place in which I ended issue number 7. Mentally, I knew exactly where we were going, and I love this book. Mike Huddleston's artwork, let's talk about that. Super crazy innovative. He's switching between different styles. I'm not just talking about 1 or 2 or 3. I'm talking about 8, 36, 87 styles. It doesn't matter. And it seems to actually help accentuate certain moods in certain scenes. So now we've got the build-up, we've got the finale. I love what it did here, because not only did it wrap up all the character arcs, not only did it wrap up the concept that was initially provided through the series of those 7 issues, but it also sets up another series. 100%, y'all. Decorum's coming back. There's going to be more. This world is going to be built out even further. I could not even be more excited. Now, this issue was a little bit more self-aware than some of the other issues of Decorum. That kind of threw me out just a little bit. That being said, still a fantastic issue. Still the best issue of this week in comics for me. And even though it wasn't my favorite issue of Decorum by far, it was a very satisfying conclusion and setup for what's going to come next. If you like crazy, innovative art styles, doing something different on every single page, if you like quirky narratives that are a little bit tongue-in-cheek but at the same time filled with lots of wild sci-fi concepts that don't really get embellished on, they just kind of get thrown out there, this is your kind of jam. And it's my kind of jam, and that's the kind of jam I like. It's better than strawberry jam, even though I prefer preservatives. Anyway, what's your favorite jam jelly preservative? Let me know in the comments down below. Decorum number 8 is here. It's a long-awaited issue, and I'm glad. And there you go. Next up from Image, we have Girl Scouts Stone Ghost number 1. This is from Jim Mahfood. Jim Mahfood used to be one of my favorite artists, back in the 90s. His Clerks work, and then, of course, the original Girl Scout stuff. This is a way different book than that. Now, I remember in 2014 or something, there was another Girl Scouts book, and at that point I looked, I was like, oh, I forgot all about Jim Mahfood. I've met Jim Mahfood in 2002, super cool dude. So reading this and reading the earlier stuff, I was like, man, his style has really frickin' changed. It's a completely different style. It used to be very clean and tight. Now it's very loose and abstract. It's more Bill Sienkiewicz and just less what we knew as Jim Mahfood. That being said, Girl Scouts Stone Ghost number 1 was a really exciting issue. I liked it. Lots of cool concepts, lots of cool artwork, yo. There is some... Now, this is not going to be for everybody. This is 100% 90s independent type stuff, but evolving the technique. And it's been a while since we've seen anything from Jim Mahfood. It's been a while since we've seen anything from the world of Girl Scouts. And why? Well, that's actually explained and addressed here. Disney was going to do a TV series. He kind of got wrapped up in there. There's a nice little strip here. Instead of an essay that most people would do at the end of a first issue, there's a nice little strip kind of explaining the journey Jim Mahfood's been on over the last several years. That being said, this is a great issue. Imaginative, quirky, weird, out there. easy to grasp, I should say story-wise, but you gotta work for it. You gotta work for it, and it's really great. Kind of like Decorum, a simple story told in a very complex way. Girl Scouts, Stone Ghost #1. Really liked that issue. Thought that was super cool. Gunslinger Spawn is here with issue #2. A wild, fun, straight from the 90s, just slam fest. This book was awesome. Really liked it. Brett Booth pumping out some of the greatest artwork of his career. It doesn't matter who the talented artist is. When they wind up over at McFarlane Studios, they start cranking out some of the best artwork of their career. Gunslinger Spawn is a Spawn from the 1800s. He's a cowboy. He's been flung into the modern day. It's got a nice little bit here where he's like super amazed by toilets. It's kind of like John Spartan in Demolition Man about 3 seashells. He didn't know how to work that, and we still don't know how to do the 3 seashells, do we? No, we don't. Anyway, Gunslinger Spawn is thrown off by toilets. Let me just tell you that, and it makes a lot of sense. That being said, though, the story is action-packed. It's light on story. It's like not going to be the deepest story you read this week, but it's going to be fun. It's going to have great, elaborate, fantastic artwork, and it's just going to have a kinetic quality that really sells it. Gunslinger Spawn, #2, $2.99 cardstock cover. Marvel? DC? I hear nothing. Echolands is here with issue #4. This series is absolutely amazing. It's got the best letterer in the business, pretty much. It's got one of the best colorists in the business. It's got one of the best artists in the business. Now, the writing has been kind of the downfall. It's not been a super compelling or engaging story with compelling and engaging characters. That has started to shift and change over the last couple issues, especially with issue #4. Get a little bit more into the characters, but the artwork, the way the story is told, horizontally, panoramically, and just absolutely freaking gorgeous. Look at that. This is a book that must be read physically. You cannot read this digitally. It does not do the book justice. You got to have the physical contraption in your hands so you can look at this glorious, amazing artwork. Story's getting really, like, a lot better, more solidified. The characters are becoming more compelling and engaging. But Echolands #4, that's a fantastic book. Sweet Paprika is here with issue #5. Y'all, I'm loving this book. I think this book is really fun. It's cute, it's quirky, it's a little absurd, and at the same time, it's very charming. It's also a little bit raunchy. It's dealing with some taboo subjects, but it shouldn't be. This is about repression. This is about specifically sexual repression. Paprika is like a CEO or like some kind of bigwig at this publishing company, and from her father to her company, she's always been told that she has to keep it all buttoned up. She's got to be professional. She can't be frivolous, right? But she's starting to see that maybe there's a little bit of a lie about that. Maybe she's been repressing herself sexually and emotionally and other kind of ways, right? And now she's starting to kind of let that freak out, unchain that freak, right? And I'm having a lot of fun with this book. Like I said, it's got a nice humorous tone, but it's got a quality to it. It's got a certain charm about it. Mirka Andolfo's artwork is fun, it's breezy, it's sexy in a quirky, weirdly cartoonish type way. Sweet Paprika's been one of my surprise picks of the year, man. I'm loving this book 5 issues in. I'm more than sold. Let's jump over to Marvel Comics where we have Hulk. #1, a brand new Hulk #1 from Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman. I didn't really like this book, y'all. I was really hyped for it. It was like one of the last books I read, second to last. I read this right before Decorum because I just wanted to save Decorum for final. Hulk #1, though, as much as I was excited for this, just didn't really dig the concept. Now, I don't really want to spoil what Donny Cates' concept is. Check out the top 10 video I do with Jim Mint. Check out Rockin' Robbie Live on Sunday nights. We'll dive in a little bit more on spoilers, but without spoiling it, I'll just say this. I don't like the direction of the story. I don't think that Donny Cates has a really interesting idea, like a nugget of an idea. Like, that's usually where Donny Cates starts, is a nugget of an idea that's really cool. What if Frank Castle became the Herald of Galactus and the Spirit of Vengeance? What if all these different things. What if Thanos won? There's a lot. That's how Donny Cates writes and builds his stories. The idea, the premise on this one does not work for me. It's taking bits from other previous runs and kind of combining it into what is supposed to come across as an original, interesting idea. But for me, it kind of felt dumb and stupid. That being said, artwork on this book is absolutely amazing. Frank Martin's colors, they pop, they shine, they glow, right? And the line work by Ryan Ottley was amazing. There's some really cool artwork in this book, but it is the story. The story does not do much for me at all. It's a weird take on Banner. It's a weird take on the psyche of the Hulk. I don't know. I'm really interested. After you read this, let me know in the comments below in a non-spoilery way, what did you think of it? Because I love the artwork. I love the excitement that that artwork brings, the coloring and everything. But the premise, to me, just, I hate to say it, came across as rather dumb. Black Panther #1 is here from John Ridley and Juan Cabal. It's been a long time coming. This was originally supposed to come out in the summer, but it's been delayed, and now it's finally here. It's an alright first issue. It's decent. It's not going to wow you. It's not going to turn you into a Black Panther fan overnight. Now, that cover by Alex Ross is freaking amazing. That's really cool. The story itself it's like I said, it's okay. It's dealing with T'Challa's place in the Marvel Universe as the leader and chairman of the Avengers. It's dealing with the changeover from Wakanda being a monarchy into like a parliamentary democracy type thing. And it doesn't feel as bogged down as, say, the Ta-Nehisi Coates run does, but it still doesn't have this like exciting kind of edge to it, right? It's got an interesting enough premise. Basically what's happened is that T'Challa has sent out these secret agents. They start dropping off, so there's a mystery. He's got to go uncover it. Juan Cabal is an amazing artist, but the artwork here just lacked an energy. It lacked a sizzle that I'm used to from Juan Cabal's artwork. So Black Panther was, I don't know, it was a little bit more than what I was expecting from a John Ridley script, but it was less than what I was expecting from a Marvel Juan Cabal exciting #1, if you get what I'm saying. So I thought it was decent, but it didn't quite win me over, but it didn't quite lose me either. Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, issue #1. This is done by some people I've never heard of, so I was not looking forward to this. Marique Nijkamp, Enid Balam, Orion Jr. Have no idea who these people are. I was not looking forward to this book. I'm very much looking forward to the Hawkeye show, which releases Wednesday. Kudos to Marvel to actually have a Hawkeye #1 like out there on that day that the Hawkeye show comes out. That's pretty crazy. Unless your shop goes through Diamond for their Marvel comics, you're not going to get this till next week. It's kind of sad. Anyway, Hawkeye Kate Bishop. It's a new series focused on Kate Bishop, a favorite character of mine. The Kelly Thompson, Leonardo Romero, Jordi Belair run was absolutely fantastic. The West Coast Avengers stuff was fun, so I was excited to see the adventures continue. If you liked all that West Coast stuff, it's done. The whole point of this book is that she's done with that life. She's moving back to New York. That's interesting enough, but they really just kind of write out everything that came before like that. That being said, artwork was cool. Had some great action scenes. An interesting enough premise. There was some good action scenes in here, but they weren't quite as much as... It didn't quite hit like a #1 should. You get what I'm saying? So I don't think it's quite living up to its potential, but for a book by creators that I've never heard of and I was very wary of, I thought it was a pretty solid book. That was pretty solid. XForce Killshot #1. This is a one-shot, baby, celebrating the 30th anniversary of Rob Liefeld's X-Force. And it's written and illustrated by Rob Liefeld. Now, Chad Bowers, of course, does the scripting there, but it's Rob Liefeld doing what Rob Liefeld does best. Now, I think that if you read, like, G.I. Joe Snake Eyes, his final issue, he had each panel inked by a different person. There were certain panels in that book where I was like, man, they're really making Rob look really good. Rob has a sizzle, a flair to his style that gets lost in translation in 2021. Let's just be honest, right? But a really solid inker would really bring him over that hump for me. That being said, the book was actually kind of fun. It was silly. It's Cable leading all these different versions of Cable and Shatterstar and Domino and Deadpool and other X-Force characters all into like one final battle against Strife. It seems like it's setting up for something else to come, but if you're a Rob Liefeld fan, if you like checking in with him, definitely check that out. But it's just a one-shot. It's not going to change your life. It is pretty decent. Thor #19 is here from Donny Cates and Nick Klein. Glad to see Nick Klein back on the book. We're starting the God of Hammer story arc. And I loved it. I thought it was great. Thor's been one of those books I felt has been lacking energy over the last several issues. I thought the last issue kind of picked it back up. It continues that here, setting up this whole God of Hammers type bit. The only problem is that Donny Cates starting to repeat bits. How many times in this run has he had to go find Odin and talk to him? How many times has that happened? So that's kind of throwing me off just a little bit. Nick Klein's artwork, though, solid, has that gravity that this story demands. Basically, what's happened is Mjolnir's been stolen, disappeared, it's gone. We learn a little bit more about the backstory of Mjolnir, not too much. There's some really exciting moments, and I'll be honest, I thought Thor 19 was a much better concept than Hulk #1 from Donny Cates this week. The Death of Doctor Strange, issue #3. I'm enjoying this series. Jed MacKay is Marvel's writer right now for me. He's able to take these characters, to take these stories, and do it in a very fun, exciting way. Death of Doctor Strange, it seems like a gimmick. It just seems like a cash grab or something like that, right? But it's actually a fun, interesting story. Doctor Strange died at the end of issue #1. Okay, or during issue #1. They're trying to investigate that. A past version of Doctor Strange, who's like break in case of an emergency, he's took a week out of his life, set him aside, and like in case of his death. So we got like an old school Ditko Stephen Strange here trying to investigate his own murder. Lots of moving pieces, but the introduction of these characters, the three mothers, which is totally gotta be a nod to the Suspiria, Dario Argento stuff, which he got from some book about an opium fever dream or something like that. Anyway, The Death of Doctor Strange #3, still solid, still fun. I'm enjoying it. It's got a nice connection to the Marvel Universe. It's got a nice scope, but at the same time, it's just telling us a really solid story and doing it exceptionally well. X-Men #5. What was this? What was this? Okay. I have not been liking the X-Men books since the news that Hickman was leaving and all that kind of jazz. We get that, right? I don't want to beat a dead horse to death. But I have been really liking the solo X-Men title by Jerry Duggan. Man, in issue #5, no. I did not like this issue whatsoever. It was dragged out. It felt like it had no consequence. It focused in on Polaris. I thought it was kind of, honestly, I thought it was kind of stupid. Pepe Larraz is not here on the artwork. Artwork's kind of fine for the most part. Polaris is actually rendered in a really interesting, cool, and sexy kind of way. But man, this book went nowhere for me, and it went nowhere fast. I did not like it. This really disappointed me. I loved issue 1, 2, and 3. Thought 4 was decent enough, but just didn't have, it had something lacking, right? Issue #5, though, the weakest of this series yet. Let's jump over to DC. And from DC, we have DC vs. Vampires issue #2. Now, I really liked issue 1 of this series, but I didn't really dig on issue #2. The artwork by Otto Schmidt felt way too loose, not quite as refined as I expect from that cat, and the writing just didn't do much for me. In fact, it just kind of repeats the same stuff from issue #1. We already know, right? This is like Deceased, but with vampires. The vampires have started this plot to take out the supervillains, the superheroes, and it's going to be big and it's going to be bad, right? So this issue is mostly Batman explaining all of that to Nightwing and Robin and Tim Drake and, Robin and Robin, I should say, and Red Hood and Batgirls and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's just repeating the same story, the stuff we already knew. It's just going over it yet again. So it didn't quite hit me the way that issue #1 did, but it had an absolutely fantastic ending. A really great moment between Hal Jordan and Barry Allen with a vampiric twist. So I appreciated that, but didn't quite have the hype that issue #1 did. Task Force Z was the opposite. I didn't really like issue #1, but I actually liked issue 2 better. I didn't think it was super solid, but it was a actually well-constructed follow-up to its first issue. This is about Jason Todd leading his own version of the Suicide Squad, but it's dead Batman villains who have been resurrected with these like Lazarus Pit pills or something like that. The problem is they're just these like kind of dumb characters, Bane and Man-Bat, like there's so much value to those characters, especially on Bane, to just kind of use them as these dumbed down zombie kind of like henchman is kind of weak. The artwork though is not weak. The artwork is super solid. Story gets a little bit more clear. It gets a little bit better, and I thought it was an improvement over issue number 1, but it didn't quite win me over. Aquaman, Green Arrow, Deep Target, issue number 2. This is a book that I absolutely hated. It was Aquaman and Green Arrow basically in a Freaky Friday situation where they're swapping identities. Oliver Queen has always been the King of Atlantis, and Arthur Curry has always been the Green Arrow, and they remember, but they also remember both lives, and most people don't. Anyway, the second issue was actually a little bit better than the first one. I think it's a rather dumb concept. It seems pretty light. It seems like something that would have just been a one-and-done self-contained issue back in the day, but they're giving a whole series to this. But I like the second issue, right? It didn't do much, but it does have some really great action scenes, some decent artwork attached to it, so I thought this was an improvement over the first issue, but y'all, you stretching this out to 7 issues? How you gonna do that? Robin number 8, fantastic issue. Oh my goodness, Joshua Williamson's Robin book has been amazing. Very simple premise. Robin is in a Mortal Kombat type tournament on this island of Lazarus or something like that. There's another faction of the League of Shadows and the League of Assassins. There's the League of Lazarus, and the winner of this tournament is going to get immortality, but there's definitely something more to it. And there's this character. We just started realizing more and more about her backstory, who she is. This is the big final battle between Connor Hawke and Damian Wayne, and it works. It's mostly a silent issue because it's filled with action, so it's a quick read, but definitely worth it. I've been digging on Robin. Issue number 8 wrapped up a lot of threads and set up a lot too. This was really exciting and really fun. Robin has been soaring. Then we got the Flash here with issue 776. I'll give it an E for effort. Let's just say that. Jeremy Adams has actually been pumping out a really interesting Flash run focused in on Wally West. He is now the Flash. Barry Allen's doing his thing in the multiverse or whatever, and so he's taking care of things on Earth. This issue is interesting. It goes very meta. It's very much inspired by somebody like, say, a Grant Morrison, where Flash and Dr. Fate are teaming up against this mystical threat, and they are literally telling you, the reader, to do certain things to help them, right? They realize that they are in a comic book, and they're like, yo, we need your help. Flip the page over counterclockwise, and you turn the page, and because you turn the book over, people fall, and they're free, and this kind of thing. So it's an interesting try at that meta Grant Morrison-y type stuff that he did in, say, Multiversity or even Animal Man, right? But it doesn't quite work. The technique is not quite there because it just seems more obnoxious and annoying. But I will tell you this, I give Jeremy Adams and company an E for effort. Let's just say that. It's still, Flash has been a really undersung book right now from DC. Then we have Detective Comics 1045. It's all right. It wraps up all the Fear State stuff, the stuff that was dealing with Mayor Nakano. He was underground, and there's all the Vile stuff. Batman was there trying to help him. Dan Mora doing the artwork, not as solid, not as concise and clear as it has been in the past. You can definitely tell those deadlines getting to him. So the artwork was decent, but not quite as solid as we're used to. And the story was just okay. It wraps up the whole Fear State tie-in pretty decently, but this coming out after the conclusion of Fear State kind of makes it lose some of its punch, some of its momentum. So it lagged for me for that, but Detective Comics is still pretty decent. 1045 out this week. Then we get Catwoman 37. This might be Rom V's final issue. There might be one more, but I think he's done. But it was all right. Here's what I liked about it. So this is wrapping up all the Fear State tie-ins. It promises on the cover here, Ivy Reborn. No, that doesn't happen. That happened in the last issue of Batman. We've already seen that. Some of that punch has been taken away. But what I really like about what Rom V's able to do here is not just tie in all of his stuff with Fear State, but he's tying in his entire run. And his full-on run started in issue number 25. He did issues before that, but they were fill-in issues. In 25, he started his run, and now he's bringing a wrap to the plot threads that were left dangling from that first issue. So I really like how he's taking the opportunity not just to be involved in a Fear State tie-in, but to bring his run to a close. And I really like that. I think Rom V is one of those rare writers who I think more so than at the big two, excels with creator-owned work, but is able to do big two work in an almost creator-owned type way. Catwoman's been a solid book. This was a solid wrap-up to some of those dangling threads, and I liked it. I thought it was pretty decent. Catwoman 37, it was all right. Deathstroke Inc. number 3, though, loved this book. Joshua Williamson is DC's go-to dude right now. Seriously, DC, do not let this dude go because he knows what he's doing. Deathstroke is a character, Slade Wilson. I like Slade Wilson. I never quite bought into all of the hype, right? I'm like, what? This guy's supposed to allegedly scare the Justice League, but he can't beat a group of kids, you know? But Deathstroke is a fun character, and what Joshua Williamson's doing is in Deathstroke Inc., Slade's decided maybe I should be a hero for a while, and he joins this organization called Trust, which he obviously can't trust. He's teamed up with Black Canary, who's there to spy on this organization. We're revealing more and more about that, but at the same time, we're getting these really dynamic, self-contained stories that are building up to an overall narrative. Now, just like Moon Knight with Jed McKay and Cappuccio, or whatever his name is, this shouldn't be applauded because this is just how comic books are supposed to be. But in 2021, it's so rare to see this, to see a comic book series that's giving me dynamic artwork, an interesting story, and an overall mystery and narrative that keeps being built up. And each issue is its own fun, simple story. This is absolutely fantastic artwork. Like I said, super dynamic and kinetic. It's charged. It's got this energy to it. I really like Deathstroke Inc. 3 issues in. I'm digging it. I like how they're building the overall narrative. I like all the little character bits. And just 3 issues in, it's done more than what most comic book series do, at least superhero-wise, in 12 issues. Superman 78 is here, giving us the Superman 3 that we deserved but never got. Superman 78 started really strong for me. That kind of weakened a little bit, but I thought issue 4 was pretty solid. I decided just to let go of my expectations and enjoy the ride for what it is. Brainiac has come to the Christopher Reeve Superman universe like he should have in issue number 3. Not Richard Pryor. We should have had Brainiac. I mean, come on. Will anybody ever give up the fact that we have a Superman movie with Richard Pryor in it? I mean, and that ending of that movie, super creepy. Anyway, so he decides to save Earth. He gives himself up to Brainiac. He goes to live in the bottled city of Kandor, which just so conveniently happens to be the city that he was birthed in, where he lived in, and so his parents are there. They're dealing with that, so it's a little bit of a lull, but it was still exciting, and it dealt with some cool themes. Superman 78 number 4, pretty solid and decent. And then Batman Reptilian issue number 6. This is the final issue of this series. Yeah, I love the hell out of this. The first 2 issues I wasn't really that digging on. Like, I just wasn't that excited for it. But it kept getting better and better. And I still don't want to fully spoil it to some of y'all, but let's just say this. This evil monster has been unleashed on Gotham, eating up all these villains. This is an out-of-continuity story in Elseworlds, a what-if you will. And it's written by Garth Ennis with artwork by Liam Sharp. The results of this reptilian creature, where this creature came from, and is related to Killer Croc, is first of all incredibly humorous, very interesting, and I love the way that Garth Ennis is writing Batman kind of busting Wayland's balls over and over about what's going on here. I loved it. Thought it was a super solid wrap-up. And one of my big complaints about the first several issues was that Liam Sharp's artwork was really good, but very murky, very dark, very hard to decipher. These last 2 issues have been brighter, cleaner, a little bit more clear. It still has a really dark type style to it. Very interesting Arkham Asylum type influence, but Liam Sharp doing his own thing. Y'all, I love this book. I thought it was great, a great wrap-up, and it's just been wild. Then we got House of Slaughter issue number 2. It's alright. It's okay. It's a pretty decent enough solid issue. What James Tynion is doing with Tate Brumball is, for the most part, they're introducing more concepts and layers to the character of Aaron, character that we've already seen die, and Something is Killing the Children, so it doesn't quite have some of the impact that it should, but at the same time, it's pretty interesting. It's interesting developments, but for the most part, the purpose of this book is to kind of build out the world of the House of Slaughter, the Order of St. George, let you know certain rituals, certain tasks, certain things about the world, right? So I feel like this book exists first of all, to put a spotlight on Aaron, because it was a character that was interesting enough that needed a little bit more room to breathe. So it adds some backstory, but it's also just, like I said, it's building up the world building of the House of Slaughter and what's going on, so that you don't have to spend so much time on that and something is killing the children, which is on a hiatus right now. But when it comes back, they're definitely going to be leaning into some of the information divulged in House of Slaughter. But House of Slaughter issue number 2 was solid. It does get a bit confusing sometimes with its structure because it's jumping between 15 years ago and further and now and this and that. So it's structurally a little bit messy, but overall still a pretty satisfying book. Then we got Human Remains issue number 3. This has been the weakest of the series so far. I really highly praised issue number 1 and 2 of Peter Milligan, Sally Cantrino, Deborah Kelly, and Andoril Design. It's interesting. It's still good. There's moments in this book where structurally it starts kind of getting a little muddy, right? Where I'm like, I think I'm following one character, then switches to another character, but I honestly thought I was still on that one character, and it kind of took me aback, right? But it still has some interesting concepts. It's about a world. It's kind of like a quiet place, but not sound emotions, right? So these entities, these beings have invaded Earth, and they are drawn to high emotion, love, joy, anger, hatred, that kind of stuff, rage. And when they find you, they just take you out, right? So the book itself is dealing with some characters, but it felt a little disjointed, a little disconnected, but it did pull itself back together at the end with a really freaking tragic scene. So Human Remains number 3, pretty solid. Then Joy Operations number 1 from Brian Michael Bendis, Stephen Byrne, and Dark Horse Comics. That's right. DC said bye, so Bendis has brought Jinx World over to Dark Horse. I thought that this would mean a resurgence, a revitalization, a resurrection, if you will, on Brian Michael Bendis' career, on his energy in his writing. No, not at all. This book, I did not understand. I understand it by the end of it. First of all, Stephen Byrne's artwork, absolutely fantastic. Really cool. What is the story about? It's about this woman. It's about this woman who has a voice in her head. Like, honestly, that's all I can tell you. They try to world build up. They try to explain some things, but it doesn't work. For the most part, for the first half of this issue, I was incredibly confused, and by the time Bendis got around to starting to explain some things, I just didn't care anymore. I thought Bendis was absolutely amazing back in the 90s and the 2000s. Something got lost in translation. Joy Operations number 1 did not do much for me. I really was confused, and by the time I wasn't confused, I just didn't care anymore. Killer Queens issue number 4 from David Boer. I liked this book. I thought it was super fun. I kind of downplayed it on the first issue. Then I went back and reread it and started reading it from that point forward. And I'm enjoying it. This is a nice conclusion to the series. The promise of more to come. And I really feel like if this becomes like a series filled with these like 4-issue stories, it could develop a narrative. It could develop some really interesting and compelling character backstory. But for what it is right now, it's just nice, easy, breezy sci-fi adventure with a very much a queer bent, right? It's definitely leaning into that, and I like it, and it's cool, but it needs more context to really make it soar, to really make it sing. Does that make sense? So I would love to see this book come back, and when it does come back, I want to see David go into the backstory of these characters and flesh them out a little bit, because as of now, 4 issues in, solid enough, but the characters themselves are just a little bit two-dimensional for me. Hellboy, his name was, the Silver Lantern Club, issue number 2. I'm done. I can't read. It's not a Hellboy book, y'all. This is Dark Horse trying to fool you. It's not a Hellboy book. Mike Mignola, and then we got Ben Stenbeck on the credits. Do not be deceived. This is not a Hellboy book. Ben Stenbeck is not the artist of this book. He does the framing device. Just like in the last issue, I knew where the series was going, and I'm done with it. It's Professor Broom and Hellboy at a bar talking to a dude, and then they flash back to these dudes sitting around a table. Sometimes there's flashbacks, and there are flashbacks within flashback. What do you think you are? You ain't Ang Lee. This ain't Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Come on, man. But Hellboy, the Silver Lantern Club, big disappointment. It's focused more on those auxiliary characters in the Hellboy universe, Witchfinder, Jewel and all this kind of, and it's not working for me, and I'm not going to keep reading it. It doesn't have the feel or the flair of the Magnolaverse. It just feels kind of bogged down. So I'm done with it. Beyond the Breach, issue number 5. This is the final issue of Beyond the Breach for now. They promised that it will return, and I hope so. But it was all right. It was decent. So I've liked this book. I've liked this like really like high octane energy behind it. It's kind of had this like breakneck pace from issue 1 on, and it's told a lot of story in 5 issues, and it wraps it up pretty well, but it does feel a bit rushed. And even with the promise that there's more coming, it still makes it feel like this bit was a little bit rushed. Maybe this shouldn't have been 5 issues. Should have been a little bit longer. Maybe it's structured in a different way to dive more deep into the characters. But this book, I almost feel like what I applauded it for in the beginning was its breakneck pace. I feel that by the end of the series, that's kind of been its downfall. That because it was paced so quick, we never really got to sink our teeth into this world, into these characters. But it was a decent enough ending. Deja Thoris versus John Carter of Mars, issue number 5, the penultimate issue of this series. I'm having fun with it. It's nothing to write home to mom about, but it's a nice, interesting story. And they start getting cosmic in issue number 5, and I really appreciate that. This has been a book, of course, it promises Deja Thoris versus John Carter of Mars. Have we gotten that yet? No. So it's a book that hasn't delivered on its promise yet, but at the end of this issue, it really does feel like it will. But I've been saying that for previous issues. That being said, I like these characters, I like this world, and I really like the cosmic turn of the story here. And it's because it's Dan Abnett, right? Pretty sure it's Dan Abnett. Let's just say it is. Let's just say it is so I don't waste any more time. But Deja Thoris versus John Carter of Mars number 5. Pretty solid issue. Thought it was cool. Good Boy, issue number 1. This is from Source Point Press. I read this because I knew a lot of people would be excited about it, wanting to know my opinions. I thought it was decent enough. Here's the idea and the premise behind this book, and why most people, I think, are really excited about it. John Wick. Now, I've since watched the John Wick movies. We covered them for Action Fest, so here we go. John Wick. The whole motivation John Wick has in the first movie is that these dudes show up and kill his dog. What if the dude showed up and killed John Wick, and his dog decided to go on this quest for vengeance? Seems interesting. Execution, not quite there. It's written by Garrett Gunn. I'm just going to be honest with y'all, okay? Garrett Gunn, I know some things. I'm not really a fan of Garrett Gunn. Let's just say that. But Good Boy issue number 1, really cool concept, really fell flat on the execution. So I'll just say that. Then we have Blacksmith issue number 5. This is the final issue from Ahoy Comics from Eric Palicki, friend of the show. Really like this conclusion. It's like a detective stories. There's a private investigator. She's a werewolf. Her partner is a djinn, a genie, right? And she's been tasked to find these 30 silver bullets allegedly made with the silver pieces that Judas was given to betray Christ, right? So you got this nice supernatural kind of bend to the story, but very much a modern day noirish detective story that I've liked. Really like this ending. Really like these characters. Eric was able to really flesh out these characters, have all those beats hit. I thought it was super cool. And the artwork by Cavalcanti, I'll be honest, when I checked out Atlantis Wasn't Built from Tourists, same art team, right? Same artist, same writer, Eric Palicki. I thought that was interesting in concept, but in delivery just didn't quite sell me. For Blacksmith, sold me the entire time. The difference in the artwork, it's black and white. I really feel like that adds something to it. It has its own dimension. It has its own depth. I really like this book. I thought this was super solid. And yo, not only is that Liana Kangas cover so fire, the best part is they do it non-trade dress on the back on each issue. That was super cool. So that's what I read. Also, I picked up Invincible Red Sonja, issue number 6, I believe. Yeah, issue number 6, Ken Hazer, TMNT, variant homage cover, as well as Barbarella, issue number 4. Is that 4? Issue number 5. Is that 5? Yes, issue number 5. But another Ken Hazer, TMNT, Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird homage. They've been doing these recently for Vampirella and Nyx and Purgatory and Army of Darkness. Glad to complete the set. Think these covers are absolutely fantastic. And local comic shop day is this week, so there are going to be some cool variant covers to find, including that Girl Scouts cover that I have in there. But y'all, My pick of the week for local comic shop day is this Radio Apocalypse foil cover, foil virgin variant from Vault Comics, Ram V, Anand RK. I loved this book, and I love even more that it got this foil cover. That's freaking fantastic. So that's what I read. That's what I thought about it. What are you reading? What are you digging? What's your pick of the week? Let us know in the comments down below. Please do join us over at popculturephilosophers.com for podcasts, blogs, and a whole lot more. If you want to support the channel, you can do so at patreon.com/PCP. We really do appreciate the support that we get from everybody. And when you join there on Patreon, at any level, you gain access to a downloadable audio version of the weekly comic book review available hours before it drops here on YouTube. Anyway, I've been Rockin' Robbie Billups. Thanks for checking out the video. Please do like, share, and subscribe. And I already said all the join us stuff. Join the PCP Army on Facebook. Join us. We're trying to get those numbers up. We want to hit 1,000 in 2022. So join it up. And sub up to Dylan's Horror Show. He's about to hit 900. And then we're on our way to 1,000. If you like horror films, like me, you know what I'm saying? Join us over at Dylan's Horror Show. I'm there every Saturday night talking about horror movies with my homie Dylan. Anyway, we really do appreciate it. What should I say now? Like, share, subscribe. Keep on digging. Thanks for rocking with us. I've been Rockin' Robbie Billups. Keep on reading. Station.